sir. How are you? I feel like I just saw you yesterday. We've been planes, trains, and automobiles all around the country, taking association transformation to the people.
Yes, yes, indeed, and I am feeling once again suitably jet lagged. It
It's
was a bit of a
always
whirl.
something with you.
Well, it's a bit of a whirlwind trip. Two days to the Midwest is quite hardcore actually in terms of the jet
That's a
lag.
quick
So
turnaround. That is a quick turnaround.
yeah,
Have you gotten your
yeah.
luggage yet? Have you gotten
No,
your luggage?
no.
Is this why you're dressed like the Unabomber?
If colleagues at United are listening, where are my
Colleagues.
bags? Where are my bags? And why are you refusing to send them to me at my home address?
Okay, just open out there for
Just put that
anyone
out
who's
there.
listening from United.
Put that out there.
Uh,
Yeah, and very apt given how much I want to have conflict with United right now. Yeah.
I see what you did there. I see what you did there. Well, that's what we wanted to chat about today was the actually great experience we had in the Midwest delivering our constructive conflict session. Not something a lot of people are eager to talk about. I know I took a break from it yesterday. When are we releasing this recording? When are people going to get to hear this?
Monday?
Oh,
Next
okay,
week?
great. All right.
Next
All
week?
right.
Yeah,
So,
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
um,
Which
Veterans
means
Day.
nothing if you're listening to it. It means nothing. It's like, well, when is
Just
Monday?
wait. Just wait. Gosh, give me a second. Coming off such a crazy trip, talking about pretty intense stuff like conflict. I took half of yesterday off. It was Veterans Day here in the United States. It was nice just to relax, recover. I know only mid-November, but I took the opportunity to pull out the Christmas ornaments and start decorating.
We're going to have some
Oh, does
major
this offend you?
conflict.
Does
Yeah.
this offend you? Why?
Massively offends me. It massively offends
Um,
me.
Andrew, you of all people know we're going to be gone the week of Thanksgiving in the Philippines.
Yeah, but Thanksgiving's Thanksgiving. It's not Christmas.
I know, but then it'll be December.
I don't.
Then it'll be
You can't
December.
spin this. You can't spin this in a positive way. There's no way you can convince me the Christmas decorations should be up. Quite frankly, before the middle of December is my view
What?
of it. But
Are you the kind of guy that leaves them up till the end of January until your community and your neighbors shun you to take them down?
I take mine back down at the latest on New Year's Day.
Well, then
Some,
you must not like Christmas very much because
uh,
I like as much Christmas as possible.
it's great. That's good.
I think Veterans Day is the perfect time. I mean, we're not going to be here for Thanksgiving, so this does not infringe on any. I know you guys don't give a crap about Thanksgiving, so um, anyway, it's fine. You do you.
I'll
You do
do
your
me.
Grinch.
I'll
You
do
do your
me.
Grinchiness. You do your Grinchiness. And I
And
think
that's
this demonstration of conflict reminds me that we have very different perspectives and we live very different lives. And I'm
we
okay
do.
with that.
And
I'm
that's
okay with
totally fine. And that is the essence of what we were speaking about last week in Champagne, which was talking
that.
about actually the basis of constructive conflict and creativity is to accept that we all come from very different backgrounds. We all have very different experiences, both personal and professional. We have lots of different perspectives, and it's better for them to come together and mix it up
Yeah. Yeah.
than for us to take each other head on, as it were.
We talked in an odd amount of detail about the A team as an example, a group that seemed to thrive on loving conflict, loving ribbing of each other, teasing. I think we're kind of like an A team. Maybe we're the B team.
Can I be? I want to be Hannibal with a
No,
cigar.
no,
Yeah,
of
I
course not.
totally
You're
do.
not.
But it's true
No,
though.
you're
It's true.
Murdoch. You're Murdoch, but less smart.
When we run this session, we do spend a lot of time talking about. We don't spend that much. We do talk about various. Yeah, but the A team is a focal point of
Well,
of the
when you're speaking
discussion.
to Americans, yeah, when you're appealing to Americans of a certain age, you rely on the A team example. I noticed
Yeah,
that.
yeah, and you're right. You're absolutely right. There was a group of people who, yeah, just constantly challenging one another in really, in
Yeah,
intense environments, high pressured environments, but were doing it in a really constructive way, recognizing that their
Yeah.
conflict was never personal. It was never
Right.
about their disrespect or mistrust of one another. And I think one of the
Yeah.
big issues why we wanted to discuss this session, why we wanted to host this session, um, was because I think there is often in many different team environments, doesn't really matter if it's in the for-profit, non-profit world, wherever, there is I think we are used to avoiding culture, avoiding conflict, and those cultures of avoidance actually
Yeah.
do very little in terms of advancing team spirit, team productivity,
They probably make it worse because
outputs.
you're just burying it. You're
Yeah,
just pushing it down.
I think
Yeah.
so. I think we end up. I think a lot of the time. I think a lot of the time you end up seeing teams sort of, at best, sort of dancing around each other.
Well, I think it just
You
creates
know.
separation. It creates maybe not passive aggressive separation, but uh, it creates a disconnect. And we talked a lot about trust as the foundation of a community, a team, a group that can experience constructive conflict and use it to their advantage. There has to be that trust, that infrastructure of trust. And I think when you're avoiding, it shows, it's a demonstration that you don't trust each other.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
we're coming off the election here in the United States. So we are, as you may have heard, we're a highly divided country.
We
And
had noticed that in the rest of the world.
I'm
We had noticed one or two
you did?
articles about something going on over there. Yes, indeed,
You did?
indeed.
Okay. Okay. Didn't know I'd gotten out so broadly, but yeah, it's I think especially coming off that, we're in an awkward place. Some people are very vocal, some people are feeling it and wearing it on their sleeve, and others are not. And
Yeah,
again, I'm not saying you bring politics into the office. I'm just saying it's an example of how different personal perspectives can influence the work environment, which is
oh,
why this
absolutely.
session is important. Because one of the pieces you do that I love in this session is you break down the three types of conflict.
Mm, mm.
And I don't know if you want to touch on that for the audience, but that's my favorite piece because there can be good, clean work
Yeah,
conflict that
yeah.
you really can wrap your brain around and address.
And I think, just to conclude that point there about, yes, I think public discourse over the last decade or so has made, I think, has in a work environment, has made people more or perceivably conflict averse, because when you're seeing it in the public realm, it's a very distasteful, personal type of
Yeah.
conflict, and that
Yeah.
then becomes our benchmark, if you like, for how we see people. How we see two opposing sides, as it were. Everything is sort of presented in terms of winners and losers, and
Yeah.
that's a very unhealthy. It is a very unhealthy approach to
Yeah.
recognizing and valuing conflict. And you're right, the three types of conflict that we talk about are task-driven conflict. You and I, we're doing some work. We have, there are several options for how we're going to deliver a project, for example. We discuss it. You have your opinions. I have my opinions. We come together. We work it out. We disagree, we agree, we ultimately then sort of come to a place of, we're both comfortable with the solution. That is task-driven conflict,
I concede, and you're happy. That's how it
and I concede some of it as well. And then you're happy. And that task-driven conflict is inherently constructive, because ultimately it's not about the individuals involved. It's not about personalities or politics or perspectives. It's just about, right, we got to get a job done. How are we going to do it? And there's no
Yeah.
reflection in the decision making of anything personal. Now, the complete
Yeah.
opposite of that, when destructive conflict comes into play, is when questions, problems, solutions deteriorate into um, attacks on one another, or perceived
Yeah.
slights, or individuals. It becomes a battle of wills, and as I say, interpersonal conflict always, it's destructive because it becomes this battle of wills that defines
Yeah.
winners and losers. And that is
Yeah.
inherently, there's nothing good about it at all. And then the third piece that kind of balances the two, if you like, is process-driven conflict,
Yeah.
which usually is a constructive piece. But again, and it's very much, it's very direct, it's directly linked to task-driven. Process-driven conflict, again, should simply be based in fact, derived out
Yeah.
of a physical reality rather than individual sort of personalities or egos. But sometimes process can descend into personal. It doesn't need to. And I think once you understand. Oh, sorry, go on. Sorry.
Well,
You've muted. You're muted.
Sorry.
You're like, I'm so
sorry.
aghast at this. I'm so fed up of this. And I'm now going to beep, beep, you beep.
I had to beat myself. Where I think teams, especially junior and middle management teams, get frustrated around process, and where it can become something that isn't as easy to get out of is when it's process that you didn't create. It's process that you are not in control of.
Yes.
When there's a bureaucracy or infrastructure or process loop that you have to answer to and comply with, but it's not necessarily what you think is correct. So
absolutely.
You have to give in, and then that starts to create a discontent within the team. Maybe not towards each other, but towards the larger system.
But with the circumstances, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think being able to understand and recognize how you perceive, or how one perceives, conflict is really, really important. Because again, how where we brought up, how we've worked, all those experiences, they all gel together to create this distinct perspective. Every one of us has a distinct appreciation of conflict or otherwise, and
physiological response to it.
Yes,
I know,
absolutely.
I turn bright red.
Yeah.
Some people will get sweaty and flustered and not be able to put it's a physical thing. The chemicals in your body start pumping, and
they do.
Different people respond very differently.
I know that when I feel conflict and when I feel on the verge of it being destructive, if the person opposite me if they stop engaging, that just makes me. I feel like I'm compelled.
You need closure. You need to go through it.
Yeah, and it drives me nuts. But the thing is, I know how I respond to conflict is I need to resolve it. I don't want it to just sit there. Other people shut down, walk away. And I guess part of the joy of working in a team, or otherwise, is being able to recognize and understand and appreciate that how I deal with, appreciate, value conflict will be different to how you do it. And again, any part of building a team and maintaining a team spirit requires us to have honest conversations about this is how for us to work. I kind of need us to work like this. How do you need us to work? And to have those honest conversations when a team is starting
at the
out,
beginning, at the infancy. Beginning. I mean, we talk a lot about team charters, partnering agreements, actually putting to paper how you as a team are going to interact. And I try to translate this in the association sense to the boards. Often there are, guidelines and board expectations and all of those things that help us understand how we're going to treat each other and should be treated. Because so much of it does live in the gray. If we're all black, all white, then there has to be a winner or a loser. There's sides. Whenever you're talking about it in terms of sides, you're already in a bad place. You're already in a bad place. And I think, as staff, we do a lot of, there's so many personality tests and skills and characteristic tests now I always think it's interesting to know as much about your board leadership as possible. At least
Oh
your
yeah,
officers.
yeah,
How
yeah,
do they handle
yeah,
conflict? How do they interact with staff? How do they interact with each other? The more, excuse me, the more information you can have, the better.
yeah.
But it doesn't necessarily make those situations any easier. But this group we met with in
Yeah.
Champaign, they were so eager to share. It was such a great. This session can either go well, like great, or really poorly, because if the audience isn't willing to share, then we can
Oh
only talk
yeah.
about our conflict for so long. But this group really wanted to share specific situations and anecdotes and get advice from people.
And
It
I
was a
think they
great,
found
great
it,
group.
yeah. I think they found it, I think some people found it quite cathartic, actually, just to
I
be able,
agree. I agree.
to have that chat. Because they were from different teams. They weren't from the
Yeah,
people we were
yeah,
working with, were from different organizations, different teams. But I
yeah,
think they found it, I think, again, they found it, helpful to just, it's often when you're in a difficult scenario, a difficult situation, it's easy to think, am I the only person who sees it this way?
yeah,
Is it just me? And, like all things, when you come together, people from outside your immediate environments, and you think, oh, actually, I am, it gives you a bit of perspective. And
yeah,
I do feel that people left that session accepting that and recognizing that
yeah,
conflict is normal, is simply part of being a human, is having conflict. What makes you superhuman is how you handle it and how you manage that
yeah, yeah,
process.
yeah. And I've come to realize more and more, in whatever relationship we're dealing with, that and maybe it's a Ted Lasso-ism, but you have to have a really short memory. When
Yeah.
there's conflict, however it goes, whether you've conceded, whether you've stayed strong, you have to then let it go. You have to leave it, be done with it, and move on to the next. And that's, we got to talk a little bit in the session about, what are the personal examples of conflict, whether it's with relationships, with your childhood, with whatever. And the longer you hold on to stuff, the more it leaches into the personal.
Oh
And
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you can't be grumbling 6 months later about your board chair who you know dressed you down in front of the board, or fought you on a task and how you were going to handle something. You have to, and maybe that's not the right example because there's authority
Yeah.
involved, different
I know what
levels
you
of
mean, though.
authority involved.
Hmm.
But I'm trying to let more go. I'm trying to have a shorter memory and move on,
Me
not
too.
free myself of that, free myself of
Any,
the weight.
anybody who wronged me more than 25 years ago, you are now forgiven.
That's your threshold. That's your window.
You think it's too short? You're right. Anybody I
You're
was in
right.
school with.
You're right. No, believe me, I know quite a few grudge holders, and it just becomes a weight that you have to carry, and it becomes your burden.
And it becomes a toxicity that you bring into every scenario. So
Yeah, yeah,
you're having discussion, decision making, conflict with people who have absolutely nothing to do with your past, but they're then
yeah,
somehow being dragged into and having to deal with your baggage. So being able to exercise, you're absolutely right. Being able to exercise some um, self awareness,
self-awareness, emotional
is
discipline.
absolutely,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely.
Because that was one piece we talked about in this group session, this 90-minute session that we did, was even if you feel like you know how you handle conflict,
Hmm.
you're also putting off a vibe. People are going to form their own
Always.
perception and opinion of how you handle conflict. And I mean, I've worked with many a team who say, oh yeah, our boss, he or she are adverse to conflict, and so we all have to kind of end up dealing with it ourselves because they
Yeah.
don't they don't address it and resolve it. Or yeah, my boss or my board chair is a pit bull, always looking to get into something. And, I mean, whether however you think you are, some
Absolutely
of the
will perceive you.
influence that you
Hmm.
have is just how others perceive you.
Perceive you, and then you're
So
labeled, and
absolutely.
often those labels are so difficult
Yeah,
to
yeah,
remove.
right,
Which does
yeah,
nothing for your career, does nothing for you personally, does nothing for anybody involved. But
yeah,
I think the quote that we use is the easiest and the most tempting, and the least creative response to conflict is to pretend it doesn't exist. And I think for me, I really like that the takeaway from what we were talking about is understand it, appreciate it, manage it, but whatever you do, don't ignore it. Because if you
No,
ignore it,
gosh.
then it becomes something
You've lost
bigger
control
and
of it.
bigger.
You've lost
Yeah,
control of it. It
yeah,
festers. It becomes something that you no longer even are. It just is going to get worse. Yes, and
yes,
that's what
yes.
I love about association transformation. I mean, all we do is go head to head and take these conflicts head on. I mean, Christmas decorating, perfect example. Now we know where each other stand, and I don't need to change your mind, and you will in no way ever change my mind.
And I'm not going to
So
try
it's
to because
right.
what's the point?
It's great.
You're wrong,
It's
I'm right.
great.
There you go. I mean, we just get on with it. Exactly. I'm totally comfortable with that scenario.
Oh, Andrew. I'm going to send you lots of pictures of all my decorations. And I want you to send me on December 18th. I want you to send me pictures of your decorations.
Well, that early. Oh, my goodness. Do you know, I went to school with a lad who's, uh, he lived with his grandparents and, oh no, let me rephrase that. I went to school with a lad. His grandmother lived with his family and
Oh,
she
okay.
never, ever let them put their Christmas decorations up until Christmas Eve.
What's the point of all that work?
And then they would come back down then on like the 27th.
That is horrendous. I mean, I don't, maybe it's the fact that my putting up of the decorations is more than a 1 or 2 hour effort. So part of it is just doing it early enough that all of that time and effort and unpacking and walking back and down the basement stairs is worth it. But
But then, when you watch the movies, they're always trimming the tree on Christmas Eve, aren't they? They're just
that's
trimming it,
not
being like,
real.
oh, well, no,
That's
it's
because
not.
it's probably a natural tree. Are you a natural tree guy too?
No,
Okay, right.
no,
So we at
no.
least we can be artificial together. Okay.
Yeah, I'd like a nice bright pink Christmas tree.
No, you're not.
Actually, actually, I
Is
did.
that what your daughter wants this year?
Oh, probably.
Yeah,
I did have,
yeah.
I did have an uncle once who used to have a gold Christmas tree every year.
Ooh, in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
70s.
It was, yes.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah, I've just freed myself from lighting, stringing the lights myself. I now do all pre-lit. So I graduated to pre-lit. I freed myself of that burden of time.
Right. Okay.
Very excited to be working smarter, not harder in my Christmas decor
It's the 21st
efforts.
century. It's the 21st century. What can I say? Look at us. I think we've kind
Welcome
of gone
to
off
it.
topic now. I think we've gone off
Have
topic
we? Yeah,
a little
maybe.
bit.
Well,
Before we. Oh, go on.
no. You can only talk about conflict so much. And
Well,
maybe that's part of the point is if your whole relationship with your team is conflict,
you have no relationship.
you
Yeah, yeah,
have no
yeah, yeah,
relationship.
yeah.
I mean, I also think, and maybe it's you and I are good at this. If you can't laugh at yourself or ever admit that there's a way other than your own, then you probably are coming into the situation with
Yeah,
the right frame of mind.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely, 100%.
So yes, why don't you sign us off today? You never sign us off. Why don't you? What
Well,
are your last thoughts
I'm
on
not going to
this?
sign this off. I'm not going to sign this off. I am not. I'm going to flip it on its head now. I'm going to talk about our friends. I've been doing a bit of research into where our listeners are because I know we always shout
Oh
out to,
yes,
we always give a shout out, and we always will give a shout out to our beloved listeners
in
in
Belgium,
Belgium,
they were our first. They were our first like
and
real
and they still are. They still
staple.
are up there. They
They
still are up
are.
there.
They
But
always will be.
do you know? I just wanted to get our number one place, our number one city in the world for listeners. Do you know where it is?
Washington D.C.
Nah. Our number one listeners, our number one city is Sydney, Australia.
Wow, that's awesome.
So
That's great.
I want to give a big shout out to our friends in Sydney for their continued
Thanks for the
support.
love. There you
Yeah, I'm
go.
feeling it. I'm feeling it. I also want to just sort of randomly give a shout out to our listeners in Roslindale, Massachusetts.
Real. There we go.
Yeah, and
Okay.
I also want to give a big shout out to our newest listeners, new city this week, Athens in Greece.
I think we should definitely take association transformation on the road.
If you're listening
Absolutely.
from Athens in Greece or Sydney, Australia, or where was the other place I said in Massachusetts?
Massachusetts.
Roslindale, and you want us to come and host a pod for you, just let us know, message us, and we're there.
Yeah, message us, or if you have a topic that's specific to your region, your market, we'd love to learn more about you, about your area, and your association and nonprofit challenges and successes. And until that time, until we hear from you again, until we add new cities, put your members and your mission first.